Great. Yes, we presented this at Virtual Dreaming, which was, oh my gosh, now I don't know how many months ago. But we are so happy to come and bring it to y'all today. So our Women in Technology Equality, we're going to share with you some interview tips and just generally making the next move in your career. If you're not necessarily looking to, I think there's some tips in here as well. If you're an employer or a champion, helping to hire folks who are, women in technology. So with that, I just want to make sure, you seeing my screen okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm going to let Blanca go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Blanca Leon-Carter. I can't believe, Bhavana, you and Allison only met like a year or so prior to me meeting you all, because I feel like you used to have known each other forever. But I also just met Allison, maybe in the first quarter of 2018 as well, and I feel like I've known her forever too. So we've done a lot of work together. I am right now a Salesforce consultant with Slalom here in Chicago, Illinois. And I will just have to say that Allison is one great person for connecting and being an ally and an advocate for others in the community. So this presentation is actually putting together some of our experiences, including her helping me, figure out how to navigate the career transition that I recently had. And I'm also the VP of Community Engagement for an organization called RAD Women. And we have a free program to help teach advanced admins who associate as being a woman to learn how to code for the system. And Allison's also one of my partners in that, because we are really trying to close that gender and that diversity gap in tech. And that's where you can find me. I will say, Mehdi, you and I are lunch twinsies today, because I had leftovers, which was beef stew and a cilantro lime rice. So we almost had the exact same lunch. And I'll kick it back to Allison.
Great. Thank you, Blanca. And so a little bit about me. So I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 10 years. I started out running IT, being a programmer, and then later managing an IT department. But when I found Salesforce, I really knew that was where I wanted to go. So I jumped ship and became a consultant for a number of years, and then and got an opportunity to meet lots of folks. And I think I really got active in the community. And I honestly think I thank the community not only for wonderful friends, but also for how it affected my career. It made certainly connecting the dots, learning things so much easier. So for all of you who are maybe new to the community, or certainly to Salesforce, Salesforce's community is really unusual, certainly in IT. So it's something that I I highly recommend if you're new to it to be active. And so then I am a principal enterprise architect right now at Salesforce. I'm also the program manager for workforce development at RAD Women, working with Blanca. So that's super exciting, and also inspired this talk today. And for lunch, I live in the city, so I went to Jimmy John's. I had a turkey sandwich. I think that's everything from an introduction perspective. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. So first and foremost, we want to talk about why equality matters. So as I mentioned, this isn't just for job seekers, it's also for allies and champions as well, to help represent underrepresented folks. And then we want to get into giving a little bit more structure on steps to take, getting the interview, preparing for the interview, and then really leaning into the whole process. We also wanted to add in something for if you haven't actually started interviewing yet and you just want to kind of understand some transition signs that both Blanca and I have seen ourselves and seen with others that you want to look for, that it's time to move on. It's time for a new challenge. And then we will end with some resources and certainly Q&A. Although, even though we've got Q&A on here, this is a very friendly group. So please stop us, ask questions, comment on things while we're there. We've got plenty of time to get through this material. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Blanca.
Yeah, and I love this, especially that we are doing this session the same week as Salesforce Equality Summit. Representation matters. Raise your hand or type in the chat box if you've been tuning in at any point this week for any of the speakers and topics that they've been talking about. So I see that there's a few, and I love that. So I am actually going to open up. I was extremely moved when I heard today's keynote guest speaker, who was Ava Duvernay, who's actually a filmmaker and founder of Array. And you may know, if you don't know her name, because it was the first time I heard her name, some of the movies that she's worked on and is really, really, really well known for is Selma and The Middle of Nowhere. And there was this quote that she said that really moved me that I want to share with you. And it was that we need to disrupt the systems of dominant behavior. And what she was referring to was the systems where people are not invited to the tables or to the meetings or given the opportunities that they should have. And a lot of times this is because there are persons of dominant nature or culture or ethnicity or color or whatever it may be that they block that from individuals. And for me, I think this is a great segue. This is exactly why equality matters, right? We all come from different paths of life, different parts of the world, different ethnicities and different life experiences, and we all deserve the right to the same opportunities, whether it be careers, whether it be living situations or healthcare, quality, and those are all things that we should all have the right to have equally. And I think that one of the big things that we always say in this ecosystem is that we are stronger together. What does that mean? That means like Allison, who helped me to navigate how to transition from my last career, or Allison inviting me to my very first Salesforce Saturday and helping me get connected with the local world, because although I had been using Salesforce since late 2012, beginning 2013, I wasn't engaged in the community. I, was doing it on my own. I was a lurker in the success community it was back then. So I didn't have these connections. I didn't have these personal networks or professional connections with folks. It wasn't until February of 2018. And, knowing that, I love it that today we have two allies on the call, right? Because I think there's always something that we can do to help somebody else. No matter where we are in our careers, you can be an ally to someone else. And a lot of the topics that we'll cover today also apply to anyone who's looking for a career. It's not just women in tech, but we do specialize in women in tech. Allison, if you wouldn't mind advancing one. And the reason being is because of these stats. So if these don't shine the light and wake you up, I'll tell you that when I look at these stats, and when I think of the stats that Sarah Franklin, the general manager of Trailhead, gave at one of these Trailhead DX, I think 2 years ago, these are shocking stats, right? So here we're looking at women are 47% of our workforce, but only 25 are in computing roles. And within computing roles, that doesn't mean you're in a technical role. That just means you're using computers in some shape, way, or form. And when you think about the different, ethnic groups, you'll see that these percentages drop drastically. For Asian women, it's 5%. For Hispanic women, it's 3%. For Black women, it's 1%. This is the problem. This is why we focus on equality because we need to bring awareness that the disparities are there and they're drastic and they need to be paid attention to. And some of the reasons why organizations and companies are really looking at this as well is because there is a great value in bringing people of different backgrounds together to work in an environment to best serve their communities or their customers. You know, we bring different perspectives, and a lot of the employee resource groups are looking at how can we better attract talent that's multicultural, right? Different age groups. You know, we want to make sure that there's a lot of diversity across all of the different areas of being human. And the other thing that Allison actually helped me learn this word is how to recognize intersectionality and bringing your whole self to work. So I'll give you the example that she helped me see. One, if you can't tell by one of my last names, because it's hyphenated, is Leon, which means lion in Spanish. I'm Latina, born and raised here. My father was Mexican immigrant, and my mother was born and raised here. She was actually third generation. You know, but in our family, when my great-grandfather was raising my grandmother and then the grandchildren, which was my mom and her 5 sisters, you know, it wasn't encouraged for you to speak Spanish, because in order to be successful back then in that decade, you know, you really needed to only know English. And the more that you would suppress your culture, the more you had a better chance of making it, you know, in the living in the society and living a good life, which shouldn't happen, but it does happen, right? And I think that, you know, learning how to embrace your whole self. I'm Latina. You know, I had a child at the age of 19, and then I became a single mom. And, you know, that changed as the years went on, and I met my husband, and now I have a 3-year-old who's Filipino and Irish and Mexican. You know, we take pride in our culture and you know, where we come from, because we are the future, right? You know, what we do and what we help shape in society is going to help our children and the future women in tech, you know, anyone in tech, anyone who's making change in the world that needs it. So that's why this is so important. And I'll flip it back to Allison.
Thanks, Blanca. So, and I couldn't agree more. And I think the big thing is too that companies need this diversity. I know that companies really want to help foster that, and we're hearing more and more about it. So, you know, owning that authenticity and that intersectionality is really important today. So let's talk about getting to that interview. You know, we share a graphic here. It can feel like a maze of just getting my foot in the door. How do I even get to the door to get my foot into the door? So we wanted to talk a little bit about that and get into that. So one thing I think, you know, as we are all talking here today and talking about the community and how we all, you know, met each other, and it is networking. I think networking is a huge component of getting your foot in the door. Meeting people and again, to further use the word authentically, to authentically network. You don't want to just you know, rack up the hits in your LinkedIn to just kind of make your network really big. You know, I get people linking into me and I have no idea who they are or where they're coming from. I highly recommend, when you're networking, if you don't know the person, and even if you do know the person, drop a note when you network in LinkedIn. And the reason I say that is it's super helpful to try and create a relationship with that person, because as you're networking, very often you are going to come back, you may come back to that person and say, you know, I'm interested in your company. I'd like to learn more. And it's much easier if you've already kind of started a relationship to ask that of somebody, or asking them to introduce you to someone who may know somebody at a company. So when you're networking, think about that. Make sure you diversify your network. Meet lots of different people in lots of different fields, because I think that connectivity of a network is more powerful when it is diverse, and you have a lot of different voices from lots of different backgrounds and at lots of different industries. As you're networking, I touched on a little bit, is think about your brand. How do you want to represent yourself? Not just, hey, I work here and I have this experience, but beyond that, you know, what are you passionate about? What gets you excited? You know, what are the things that, you know, get you out of bed in the morning? Being really authentic and thinking about that, and being very purposeful about how you communicate your brand makes a world of difference when you're trying to land an interview, because folks want to get excited about what you're excited about, and like will attract like, and you'll be able to hopefully find a company that fits your passions and your skills and the things that get you excited. I think it's important to have a board of directors, to have folks that are friends, that are maybe in your industry, maybe just have a great deal of experience under their belt, to be your board of directors, to help you articulate what your brand is, make sure it resonates, make sure that it's you know, truthful to who you are, not just kind of the polish that we put on things. Even checking your resume or something like that, or role playing an interview with your board of directors can be hugely powerful. I know I count both Bhavna and Blanca and Rachel in my board of directors to bounce things off of, and definitely they hopefully bounce things off of me as well. And it can really kind of put things into perspective as far as, you know, saying yes to a volunteering activity, or you know, what you share on social media. I think that's another thing to be cognizant of. I think we are all pretty aware that whatever we share via LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram is something that may also cross, you know, your interviewer's vein. It can also attract interviews to you. In fact, I had noticed a post from a woman I'm connected to on LinkedIn that she was looking to work for a company, and she did a great post just kind of summing up, not just asking for a job, but just saying, you know, hey, this is my experience and looking for something, and these are the things I'm passionate about. And she made it very relevant, and there was, you know, her authentic brand being presented, and it really helped open doors to her, and she was able to find a job. And I wouldn't say that, you know, everyone should go out and post that when you're looking for a job, but think about what's authentic for you and is going to kind of get yourself out there, and your board of directors can help you think about that. And lastly, your resume. That's still an important part of how we get out there. Certainly if we're applying to a company and we absolutely have no contacts with that company, but we want to get in a door, we want to make sure that that resume speaks for us, because we can't be there. Spell check it, have a friend look over it, maybe a friend or two look over it, to help you figure out, do I have everything that I need to have? Is it short enough? Is it long enough? Does it go into the right detail? Does it grab the eye? Am I putting my skill sets in there? There's a lot more here for resume best practices, but think about that it is an extension of your brand and how you get in the door to land an interview. So that was a lot there. I also want to pause and just see if there's any questions or thoughts or anything at all.
Could I actually share a story, Allison? Really
Absolutely, quick? Rachel.
About the importance of networking. I just want to share a story that I actually applied for a job when I was coming back into Salesforce after my health hiatus for a few years. And I wasn't certified, so it was tough to get back in. And I ended up not getting the job, but the person that interviewed me actually offered to give me feedback as to why. And I actually really saw that as a gift. And so I took her up on that, and she gave really incredible feedback to me, and we actually developed a relationship from that. And so we just stayed in touch over the years. She was one of the first people to congratulate me when I did get a job, and she actually now works for Salesforce, and I'm a Golden Hoodie recipient, and she actually interviewed me at a Salesforce event on that day. So you just never know where those relationships are going to lead. So just don't take the no personal. And sometimes you just end up building a relationship, which is much more important.
That is great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Rachel, because that's an example of an interview, even if it turns into a no, can be a massive networking opportunity. And, you know, having the courage to say, yes, I'd love feedback, even if that feedback might be hard to hear, it's totally a gift. Thank you.
Can I share my experience too? I have a
Sure,
question.
absolutely.
So user groups are very, very good places to network with other people. I remember one time I've been in one user group and I met a guy, and then he invited me over to one of his Salesforce classes, and that was very good for me. And then we were able to work together on some nonprofit projects. And I also have a question. Do you have any thoughts or ideas about networking, some tips or tricks about networking, how connect with people? What kind of, I know authenticity is very important, but do you have any tips or tricks in that regard?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Allison, if you don't mind. So if you're on Twitter, I would say check out my Twitter handle, but also check out RAD Women Code. I also have been on a little bit of a social media hiatus because my mom has been very ill the last few weeks and has been in the hospital. But I'll tell you that one of the things when you think about networking via social media is you do want to be your authentic self. You can decide how much or how little you want to put out there, especially when it comes to social media. You know, we all have different personalities and levels of comfort when it comes to connecting. So find I would say a frequency and a level of being authentic that you are comfortable with. Don't do anything that you don't feel good about doing. I think that one of the things you want to make sure when you're connecting with social media, and this is even in person, is that it's a conversation, right? If you put something out there and someone else comments on it, you know, you want to have a dialogue back and forth. Same like with Allison, you know, we met, she actually connected with me at a Women in Tech Devs virtual meeting like this. We were on Zoom, and I mentioned that I was in Chicago. It was my first time attending that virtual event. And what she tells me is that if I could see her face, that she went like this, her eyeballs popped out, and she leaned in because she was like,
lie.
she's in Chicago and I got to connect with her. And so, you know, it was follow-up. She then found me on LinkedIn and we connected there. And then she invited me to, you know, Salesforce Saturday, and it didn't stop there. You know, the communication, you can decide a frequency that makes sense for you and the person that you're networking with, but make sure that there's always follow-up. Right. And what I mean by that is like, hey, thanks for chatting with me for virtual coffee to discuss that position or that role, right? Maybe you're asking questions. You know, that can translate into different ways. I love that you brought up community groups because that is, I would say, the secret, ultimate secret sauce of this ecosystem. In the community groups, you're going to find people that are within your area, like your geographical area, or if it's virtual, you can meet them anywhere, but they have similar interests. I think it's easier to then make that connection because you're all there for some mutual content, right? And you all share that that form of camaraderie with people because you know, we're in this ecosystem. But I would say definitely make sure that it's not like you communicate and then you're gone for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and and you only connect back when you need something. That's the wrong way to network. It really needs to be like an ongoing thing, and you decide the different people that you're networking with and what makes sense for each of those relationships, because when it comes down to networking, it's all about relationships. You have to cultivate those. Just like you would water plants, you need to do the same thing.
That's
Thank
well
you.
put,
Thank you,
Blanca.
Blanca.
Yeah,
I,
thank you for the question.
thank you.
Um,
Follow-up question too, if you don't mind. In terms of follow-up, I know people are busy, and how can I know to be authentic is very important. But what would you recommend for following up with other people? Regarding to that, the busyness of them, or the lot of jobs they have. So what would you recommend in
I
terms of?
think I think there's different ways you can follow up. You can always do it by email, or if you follow them on Twitter or on LinkedIn, you can send them a direct message. I would keep it short and always say, looking forward to reconnecting, at a future date. Let me know whenever you're available. That way it's open-ended for them to respond back when they have time. I am a big person when it comes to handwritten notes. So oftentimes I may meet you, and then maybe the next time I see you, I have a note that I'm handing to you. If it's maybe a relationship that I have cultivated and I made friends with a lot of people, even on this call, I may, if I know your mailing address because we've become really good friends, I may mail you something out of the blue just to say, hey, I'm thinking of you and thank you for your inspiration and for being part of my Ohana. So there's different ways. Allison, you may want to add something else.
You know what? I've got a little bit more to add, but I will leave that as a teaser because I know it's a little deeper here in our content. So I'll just keep us moving. But thank you for all that. I think that was great conversation there. So Blanca, I'm going to pass the baton back to you so you can share with us how to prepare.
Yeah, so I really love this one. I think there's a lot that goes into preparing for an interview, right? I think two of the main things is that one, you need to know who your allies are. And two, you need to know who your audience is. Who are you going to be interviewing with? What company? Allison, if you wouldn't mind advancing one. So when I say get to know your audience, there's different ways that you do this. Allison already touched a little bit about social media, leveraging LinkedIn and Twitter, but it goes beyond that, right? You want to do your research. You want to put on your researcher hat. You want to go into Google. You want to search for the name of the person you're going to be interviewing with. For one, you want to get to know them, see what you can find. Maybe there's some history that you've shared together. Maybe you went to the same college together. Maybe you're involved with some nonprofits that, in common. You want to look for anything you have in common that you can make a connection when you're having a conversation with them. Know your audience is also, look on Glassdoor. Glassdoor.com is a great resource for you to look at how the company is doing, how it's been rated with those that are in the public community that are putting reviews in there. I myself make contributions to Glassdoor because I want to make sure that my experience with the company is shared so that if someone else is looking, they can use that those reviews and the data points that you provide to get Glassdoor, because you can get everything from like range of salaries for certain positions at that company. So Glassdoor is an incredible resource, and I'm sure that there's more outside of that, but you want to make sure you do your research. And then I will re-emphasize, because the community is really the ultimate secret sauce. And you want to lean on them in ways. One, I think it's pretty scary to be vulnerable, right? To say, I want to transition, but I just don't know how to, or maybe I don't know if my skill sets are good enough. And I say that because it's actually words that I found myself telling Allison in conversations. And also sometimes you just don't know, maybe the role or position that you're looking for is something that you haven't done before. And in that case, there's a level of being vulnerable that you need to open up and kind of put the question out there to people who you trust to help you. And I think for me, my Chicago Ohana helped me understand. I had a million questions about what does it mean to be a consultant and what happens when you're on the bench and and I had like I was firing off questions left and right, and I was like, yeah, I don't know that I could ever do that. But after sitting down with my Chicago Ohana for 45 minutes, they actually were intrigued by all my questions, and everyone was sharing their perspectives, and other people contributed questions. And I think that's the best place to get to know your audience, right? One, to do your homework about the role, but then talk to other people who are working at that company or who have played or been a part of that position or role at, you know, somewhere else, because there will be similarities of responsibilities and pace of work and all of that that you can learn. And I want to come back to finding your allies. Finding your allies is not just, you know, if I'm a woman in tech, I'm looking for male allies to help. No, finding an ally, it could be anyone who maybe has been through a similar path or has had some experiences and knowledge that they can help share to answer your questions and help you navigate. Being an ally could also be within your own company. Maybe you've been in a position in a while within your company and you're trying to figure out, I want to stay at the company because I really like it, but I just need to know if there is another space for me. Maybe there's going to be a new position opening up or someone leaving or something like that. If you find allies within your company, chances are they're going to look out for you. And I know this is kind of a touchy kind of topic sometimes, right? Because it's like, well, who can I trust in my workplace? You know, and I think that you have to do some soul searching to figure out where your comfort level is, who can you talk to that you can let know that you have other interests in growing and developing professionally in those areas, and who can look out for you. That may be your direct boss, or supervisor, or manager. That may not. That may be somebody within another department, but they have insights because they're really well connected with all the office politics and they can, you know, help be on the lookout or have open ears for you. So find your allies are very, very important. And I want to spend some time talking about the technical part of the interview, because I will tell you that can just be flat out intimidating. Just hearing the words, yeah, we'd like you to come in for a technical interview, or we'd like you to, you know, do one virtually or whatever. That can really just leave someone feeling squeamish and wanting to run away and throw in the towel already to give up, right? But a lot of times it's only because it's foreign. Maybe it's something we haven't experienced before. Maybe it's something we haven't experienced in a long time. For instance, I was in one of my roles for 19 years. Well, I didn't have to interview for a job in 19 years, so I was a little rocky, right? So you want to get practice. You want to lean on your board of directors, lean on the people that you know very well from your community user groups that can help you navigate what does a technical interview look like. Maybe do some practice scenarios. The other thing is, when you go into the technical interview, when you're provided the information of the scenario that you need to solve for, please don't just rush into it, right? Take a moment to digest what it is that the ask is. And if you have questions or you need a little bit of clarity, it is totally okay for you to ask clarifying questions of whoever's doing the technical interview with you. The other thing is as you're going through the technical interview, don't just give up, okay? Give it the best that you got. And what you can do is you can have a conversation with the person who is there with you during the technical interview, and you can explain to them, okay, this is what my thought process was. This is a barrier that I hit around here, and I think maybe it could have gone way A or way B or way C, but I wasn't quite sure, you know, but talk it through, because oftentimes in talking it through, they'll understand that you have a really good train of thought when it comes to solving problems, and you're very analytical. And that another thing that's really important is that you're open to feedback, right? You're open for dialogue. Just because you hit a barrier, that wasn't going to stop you. You're able to communicate where you got to where you were, and maybe have a conversation about how to take the next steps and how to get to the end. So those are some very, very important things. And like Allison said before, or Rachel too, in her story, if it doesn't go well and, you know, maybe it's left with you didn't, you know, you didn't get the job or whatever, ask for feedback, because it may be that they'll tell you areas that you can look to improve or practice a little bit more. And that will help you for the next time you go into a technical interview.
Yep. In fact, with technical interview, I keep thinking like math class, where they tell you show all your work, because even if you didn't get it perfect, they want to know what you're thinking and where your head's at, because we all get nervous in an interview. So if they see that you're thinking right and you just got flustered, most organizations aren't concerned with that. They just want to know, because they know you're not going to be interviewing every day, especially for many of us technical people who may feel more introverted. They just want to see your thought process. So great advice.
And you could say, oh, I got stuck here, but maybe, you know what, if I were in a real work scenario, I would go to Google, or I would go to this group of experts that work in this department with me or that department, or I'd go to my community user group and pick their brains about the issue. That goes a long way. So feel free to be open when you're in that technical interview with dialogue.
And Blanca, I just wanted to add, I actually had a Salesforce community member offer to dry run it with me, and that was super helpful. So if a friend is willing to offer their time, take them up on that.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks for
Absolutely.
sharing, Rachel.
Okay, so I promised and teased a few ideas as far as networking and some other ideas, which we kind of lump into how you can lean in. You know, what are some other things that might be a good idea to think about as you're going through the interview process, and certainly as you're networking, just trying to get your foot in the door. So think outside the box when you have an interest in a particular position. So we call this, you know, when you don't have the exact experience, the ... there is that, very similar to what we were talking about in the technical interview just a moment ago, is you know, share your attitude about a question or a job skill, and show your aptitude. You don't have to have every single thing in the job description. You know, there's that old conversation about how women tend to not apply for a job unless they feel they have 100% of the qualification, versus they say most men will be about 60%. Now that varies by individual, of course, but I really want to encourage people to think about, you know, yeah, I have an interest in this job, and, you know, there's room to grow, as opposed to I don't have those skills yet. Because if you're coming to a job perfectly aligned to it, is there room for growth? That might be a question you need to answer. So don't get panicked if you feel like you only have some percentage of the experience. One way that you can start to kind of think through it is, before you get into the interview, mind map out your experience and figure out where you have gaps, what you do in regular life, or what you imagine you would do if you needed to take on this skill set, how you go about getting it, maybe something that's maybe analogous to analysis. Well, no, I can't say that word, is in like parallel to that is a like skill that might help draw the picture for them, that while you don't have exactly this experience or exactly this certification, that you can handle it. Above all, be honest though. You want to be, again, that word, authentic, about what you can and cannot do, because they are really trying to make sure that you fit into that position, and it's going to be successful for both of you. Show that you're listening. Share thoughts as you're going through the process. Be an active listener. Ask questions for sure, just to show that you're paying attention. And that also follows suit with the follow-up tips, which is, when you write those thank you notes, I actually used to do handwritten, but very often, as much as we'd like to, and Blanca's wonderful at that, by the way, is many times I'll end up in a situation where I might not even know their email. I just know their name because I met them at an interview, and they may or not give me a card. And in those instances, most people are on LinkedIn. You can find that person and be able to just write a LinkedIn message, even if you're not connected to them. Connect to them with a note that says, I really appreciate it, and I love that we talked about whatever it was. You know, and you don't have to pressure them. I hope we get to see each other or any of that. Just really try to make an authentic connection and thank them for their time. That's going to be very impactful. And it does need to be within 24 hours is kind of my loose kind of estimation of it, hopefully even sooner than that. So basically as soon as you get to a computer, because those interview processes move very quickly. So you want to make sure that folks know that you really appreciated the time, appreciated the opportunity. It also opens the door for them to give you that feedback. Again, Rachel's story is amazing, that, you know, it is really meaningful when you find folks that are willing to do that with you. You're going to learn a ton from them. So when you make that authentic connection, when you're networking, quite frankly, in an interview, you're going to have a lot more opportunity to go that little bit further and be kept in mind if they have a like position opening up. You know, I actually had the experience where I interviewed for a job, and they told me after the fact that, you know, they had multiple people and they had already given it to the other person that was applying, but they liked me so much that they argued to open up a position for me. And actually that's the job I have today. So the point is, you never know what's going to happen. But if you lean in and you are doing all these things, that you're sharing your thoughts and your aptitude and your experience, and you're showing you're listening and you're following up, you set yourself up for success no matter what happens. So I just wanted to check back and make sure that we completely answered any questions before we kind of jump to the next section on leaning in, preparing, interviewing.
Transition signs.
Oh, transition signs. Let's go ahead and dive into that. Give me 1 second. There we go. So Blanca, why don't you take that away?
Yes, and I'm going to tell you, when Allison and I were preparing this, we really did put in all of our experiences in here. If any of you have heard my story either on, I think it was like the Trailhead Talk Show or at Dreamforce this past year, or via Twitter, you'll see that I had to experience some of these red flags myself in the recent years. And so one of the biggest ones that I'll say is a transition sign is if you're feeling that where you are at, there's no room for growth, right? This may look differently depending on where you are at and what level in your career you are at. For me, I'll give the example. Maybe you're taking on too much responsibility and there hasn't been a pay raise, there hasn't been a promotion in title, or maybe it's that you've been in the same position and you're looking to grow or develop in more higher or advanced areas and you're just not afforded that opportunity, either because someone else handles that area or they just flat out don't have a position for you that would allow you to fill that type of role. So this does look very different. It could also be that, you know, you're near burnout, you're working too much, you're doing a lot, and you're overextending yourself. That's a sign that, you know, there's not really room for growth, and you're actually doing more damage to yourself than anything. And I speak from that, from a health perspective. I've experienced that personally myself. You may also look at transition signs like lifestyle changes. For me, I'll give the example, maybe you are experiencing a lifestyle change where you are becoming a caregiver, and that could be a few different things. Maybe you're becoming a parent for the first time, or you're bringing another child, you know, expecting another child, or maybe that, you know, like I find myself right now, you know, my mom has been seriously ill, and she's going to need some extra support from my sister and I. So we are picking up caregiving roles to take care of my mom who's really ill. It could be lifestyle changes are not always for some kind of negative, you know, reason. Sometimes it's a positive reason. One that I like to think of, and it's kind of like my fantasy, is to say, well, you know what? I just don't want to be tied to an office, and I want to travel the world and work from anywhere with internet connection and live life to the most, and work from anywhere in the world. Another lifestyle change could be COVID, living through a pandemic, having to work from home. You know, thank God that when it comes to, you know, working in this ecosystem with the CRM, all I need is internet connection and a computer. And then of course my expertise, you know, my knowledge and many years of experience. So that could also be a lifestyle change. You also want to look at being in a toxic workplace. This too, I've also experienced. It could be that maybe you're not being heard. Maybe you have ideas, but no one's listening to you. Maybe you throw them out a few times, and then a year or however time in the future, somebody else throws that idea out and, oh yeah, that's the best idea in the world. And you're sitting there like, yeah, I threw that out like 5 times already. You don't say that out loud, but that's what you're thinking in your head. I've been there before. It may be that a toxic workplace is that you have a new manager, or you have some colleagues that don't respect you as a person, that they don't treat people equally. Maybe it's that you're not being looked at when it comes to for those promotions or those bonuses or you know, other positions that are opening up or opportunities to go to such conferences. You know, these are all red flags for being a toxic workplace. They're not supportive. And you can only go so far in an environment where you're not being fully supported. So that is toxic workplace. And I'll just add that even if you are in your dream job, and I love to use Allison for this one because she's at Salesforce and she's like, she told me, I wouldn't have left my other company if it wasn't Salesforce because that's my dream job. And maybe you're like Allison at your dream job, but I do think one should always be looking. And the person who gave me this advice was actually the associate director at the nonprofit that I had worked at for 19 years. And it wasn't that she was trying to encourage me to go out the door and go find another job, but she said, this is something that I learned for myself and I need to practice, because when you're always looking, one, you're keeping an eye on what the market is, right? 2, you're keeping an eye on where are my interests? Where are my future goals? You know, does that fit? Does this role that I'm in fit? Or is there something else that I either want to see if I can find a way to move into another position within the same company, or leave that company to one that's similar that has more positions, or maybe you're transitioning careers in a whole nother direction. But you should always be looking. Those are some of the key points for transition signs.
I just wanted to quickly add that, you know, we were talking about toxic workplace and environment. I recently had an experience, and I had shared that, Allison. I had an interview for as a subcontractor for a senior developer position. And the interview process was so off for me that halfway through it, I decided that I'm not going to do this, because it was like I was talking to a robot. So they came in, they had 30 minutes, and they had, it looked like they printed some technical questions from internet somewhere. And they said, first we will ask you technical questions, then we'll ask you some soft skill questions. And then they started shooting. There were 2 of them. They started shooting questions at me. And also they said, keep your camera on, but we will not keep our camera on. So I never got to see them. And no chit chat or hello, how are you? How's your doing? Nothing. They just like started shooting questions at me, and I knew the answers, but I was like, I can't work with people like this. And then when they got done, they was like, okay, now we're going to ask you a soft skill question. I was like, who does that? Is this really a person or a robot? And then they said, okay, thank you. I was like, no, wait a minute. I have some questions for you. Like, didn't even give me a chance to ask them any questions. And then I was like, okay. So I know like sometimes it feels like we really want something because the job looks really nice, but you know, you don't have to take it. They need you as much as you need them. So don't, if something seems off, no matter how good or promising the position, you just don't even start that.
Sorry, maybe Salesforce have a new product, Einstein for HRs?
Sorry?
Einstein for HR?
Yeah, maybe Salesforce have a new product like Einstein for HRs.
HRs, yeah, seriously.
I think we have a new project innovation here. You should get on that, Vitali. Make some money selling it to them when you're done with it.
Yeah.
But I think like that's a great example. You have a great idea there. You know, Einstein for HR. You know, you want to make sure that you are around people that are helping to motivate you and lift you up like you would to others. If you don't have that, whether it's in your direct workplace or within your network, whether it's your personal network, your board of directors, or if you can't find that within, you know, these user groups. I mean, I will say I am really good because Allison, you know, and Rachel actually, we're on the phone every now and then. They're on my board of directors, right? And so community group leaders like Bhavana, every time I talk to her, we have conversations about career. Like, I think those are really, really good places, but some people, they don't have that. I didn't have that before I met people in the community in February of 2018. And I will say that since I met and connected with people in the Ohana, life has been very different, and career has been, I would say, a lot more healthy for me in a really challenging way, but that also allows me to bring my full self. I'm a mom, you know, I have 2 kids. One's a grown adult, but I have the little one. You know, now I'm a caregiver to my mom, who's very ill. And you should make sure that you could bring that out when you're having conversations. You can ask questions if you don't know if it's safe. When you're interviewing, you can ask questions about an organization or a company's culture and, you know, how the employee dynamics is, what affinity groups do they have, or like, you can ask questions about, you know, what flexibility when it comes to people, you know, with families or certain things that you're looking for. If they don't have answers for you, that's probably a little bit of a red flag, because usually they will be open to share that with you.
I have a question. So in terms of always be looking, I don't know, what's the best approach to always be looking? For example, if I go to an interview and I got a job and I turn down the offer, is there any chance for me to apply for the same company in the future? Does it make sense?
I think it depends on the company.
Agreed.
And I think it depends on how was that turning down the position managed, right? If you managed it well and you kind of shared experiences and why, a lot of times that helps them understand how to better attract people to not turn down the offer, right? And then I think how you cultivate and follow up with it, like, thank you for the opportunity, but you know, this is a great fit, but I may have a friend or someone in the community that might like your company, you know, would you mind if I shared your name to refer them? I'll let Allison add anything.
I was just going to say that also applies to when you're leaving a job. You don't necessarily need to burn the bridge. In fact, I highly recommend not burning the bridge. And to, you know, Blanca's point, as far as pointing out that, you know, I'm in my dream job, but I certainly haven't lost the numbers of the employers that I liked working with. And I keep those connections and those, you know, relationships going. Just because I've left a place doesn't mean that there might not be a different position that makes sense for me, you know, later on down the road. So I think from an always be looking is you just never know how the road's going to twist and turn. For some company, if you turn them down, and even if you turn them down gracefully, they may say, nope, we're you know, we wouldn't hire you back. You know, that's okay. But other companies, that's not the case. But being graceful at all times on your own part and mindful of those relationships, because people who turn you down for a job could end up working at a different place and interviewing you and hiring you on. You just don't know this is always dynamic. And I think that's really the point on always be looking. You are going to be changing jobs. People around you are going to be changing jobs. Companies are going to be changing. So just be aware of that dynamic nature. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you so much.
I just want to add, hold on. I just want to add one more thing really quickly because I have to open the door. But when it comes to that, like when I left the job right before this one that I'm in now, I gave them feedback about, you know, that I was vocal about my passion areas and areas for growth. When I interviewed, I was told XYZ, and I haven't really seen that come through in the 18 months that I've been here. And so, you know, I think I've kind of, you know, outgrown this role and I'm going to move on. You can share that. And I actually saw that they have recently reopened positions that look really appetizing. And that's because they took into consideration the feedback that I gave them. So please give it back because you're being an ally to somebody else that you don't even know yet.
Great points. So we are going to go ahead and get into final thoughts. One thing, I love this slide. I love this graphic because the look on her face with the one eyebrow down and the cape coming out, she is in a total power pose. And believe me when I tell you that when I go into an interview, I think almost every single one I've done what's called a power pose, meaning I go into the ladies' room, someplace not in a public area, and I literally stand just like she's standing, where I've got my arms like this and I'm standing and taking some breaths and centering myself. It's amazing what that does for your confidence. And there's a lot of confidence that you need to build as you go into the interview process. Quite frankly, now that we're on virtual, if you're doing a job interview virtually, you can just turn off your camera and you can do that. You could take the whole interview that way. It'll just make you feel a lot more confident to get into that power pose. And quite frankly, you can even think about the fact that you're wearing a cape. It's an imaginary cape, but you can think about it. And if it makes you just giggle or smile or just have that positive outlook, those kind of mental tools really carry a lot of weight so that you come into that interview or any conversation with somebody as you're networking or interviewing with that positive approach. So Blanca, anything to add as far as final thoughts? I know we've got a few things to get through here, and I wanted to make sure you were able to add in some thoughts as far as
yeah, did we
just talked about my power pose idea and this graphic.
Okay, so I'll cover the bottom ones really quickly. So I will say one, negotiate, negotiate, and negotiate. I know it's not something that everyone is comfortable doing, but we need to learn how to do it. Reason being is that you want to make sure that the position that you're moving in and the company that you're moving to respects and values you as a person and your expertise and the perspectives and everything that you bring to the table, right? So when it comes to negotiating, do your homework. I already mentioned Glassdoor, but make sure you have conversations with people who either worked there before or are in similar roles at other companies, because you want to make sure you have a high-low range of what you want to ask for. You don't have to disclose, at least not in the state of Illinois, what your prior salary was, which is a good thing, right? And a company that asks you that, I think some companies are moving away from it because it's not really a fair question, right? You want to make sure that what you're going in to ask for in terms of salary is real to what's going on in the market and that you're entitled to. The other thing is if your high-low range is totally off, or not totally, but maybe a little bit off from what the company has to offer, look at if there's other ways that they can compensate, right? Maybe it's that they'll pay for professional development conferences. Maybe it's that they'll give you some flex time or work from home, or maybe it'll be that they can give you more PTO time. You can negotiate that sometimes. Sometimes you can negotiate, like if you're going to transition jobs and let's say that their benefits for like health insurance, etc., doesn't start for 90 days or whatever, try to negotiate that if it's really important to you. I know for me, I have a little one and that was important for me. So it doesn't hurt to ask. So you could just throw it out there and just say, hey, you know, I'm not sure if this is something you could do, but the salary range is just a little bit, I was hoping for this. So is there any way you can accommodate more PTO or whatever it may be? And ask questions if you do know somebody who works there to see if you know, if they know that this company has done it before. And I'll say, don't settle. If you're settling, you're kind of setting yourself up to find yourself stuck in the future, finding yourself in a place where you can't really grow and stay there for a long time. And no one likes bouncing around in jobs. At least I don't. I like stability because I have a family to provide for, and it gives me peace of mind and, you know, leaves me with feeling like I'm sane if I know that my job is secure and I'm not going to have to be looking for another one in a few months. So don't settle. Make sure it's a good fit for you. Why? It all goes to this last bullet point. You want to plan for your future. So make sure that this transition that you're making is somewhere on that path and the trajectory of moving forward and getting to where you want to be in the future. If it doesn't feel like a good fit, there's probably a good reason why your gut is telling you that, and you should follow it. And I think that's all I had for this one.
Great. So that is everything that we have to share. And we promised you resources. And here are many of these resources you may be familiar with, you may not be. Hope everybody here is familiar with Trailhead. That's probably the most crucial one. And I think you can get to many of these resources through Trailhead. There's Salesforce Saturday that's also available in the Trailblazer community. We've mentioned RAD Women, so radwomen.org to learn a lot more about that. WitDevs, which is a customer community, or a Trailblazer community of women in technology developers. Ladies Be Architects. I feel like I'm stealing all your thunder, Blanca, because we fans of all of these. Pep Up Tech, Amplify. I know Rachel knows quite a bit about Amplify and is very active in that organization.
The next one's Path to Code.
Path to Code, thank you. You couldn't even hear it. Like, wait a second, which one is that? Apex Hours, so they've got a lot of great resources. Super Mums is doing quite a bit, and they even have some series out there. And then, of course, VetForce for veterans and their families, their spouses.
And if you go to that URL at the bottom, that www.radwomen.org/VD2020, you'll have links, hyperlinks to every one of these programs and organizations. So you can click on them and go visit their websites, learn about what they have to offer, and get involved. Explore and have fun.
Could I add a tip, Bhavna? Or sorry, Blanca.
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
You're both on the call, sorry. Just well, back when we could see people, I actually have crashed other Salesforce Saturdays. So I actually crashed the Chicago one back when we could travel. So you could do that. And I think the beauty of everything being virtual now is that a lot of the Salesforce Saturdays have gone online. So, and it's open to other cities, right? So you could crash another city Salesforce Saturday easily at this point. So that's one of the, I think, great opportunities of everyone working from home now. So just keep that in mind as well.
That's a fantastic point, Rachel. And I think a lot of the community groups, the admin and developer groups as well, are virtual now. So you can go to London, you can go to Mumbai, you can really just, depending on your time zone. Yeah, we have someone here from Russia. That's a great example. Wonderful. Any other questions or anything else? I just want to leave you with the resources rather than taking those away.
Wow, there was so much in this today. Wow. So much to think about, like so many things. It's amazing. Yeah. I wish I had heard this when I had just started my career. So, you know, it would have been, you know, somebody, I wish there was somebody to guide me like this, but you know, hey, it's never too late.
It's never too late.
It is
and
never too
you know,
late.
this is what, our third third or fourth time. I don't even know who's counting, but Alice and I have done this session a few times, and you know, we always keep iterating, right? We change things.
Yeah.
We elaborate on different pieces based on who's in attendance, and we want to make sure that it's very real, because I think sometimes we get stuck in this like fantasy world of what we think we need to be like, or what we think how we need to act, or, you know, and what approach is the perfect approach. And really, life is not like that. There's no manual to this. It is challenging stuff to navigate. And if you have feedback, we are more than happy to hear it, because we will like to take that into consideration for the next round when we present.
Well, we might just need to have you like say this to us like frequently, you know, maybe once a year, just to as a reminder, because you know, it gets very easy to. I know I was in a job for 13 years, and I should have left like 3-4 years before I left, and I just was so comfortable, so lazy actually, also so intimidated that I probably can't pass a technical interview. That's what I thought. I'm too old to pass a technical interview. So it's just so good to hear all this, because it really helps. I'm going to stop recording so that people can freely ask questions. So